You won't believe which Hollywood legend Robert Duvall says he couldn't stand working with. This one's gonna stir up some film world controversy. We all love hearing behind-the-scenes stories from iconic actors, especially when they're brutally honest. And no one gets more real than Robert Duvall. He's a powerhouse in cinema, known for legendary roles in The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, Tender Mercies, and countless others. But underneath the Oscar wins and critical acclaim lies a man who's never been afraid to speak his truth, even if it means shaking up the reputations of some of the most revered names in film history. Recently, Duvall opened up in a rare, no-filter interview. He finally spoke about people in the business he truly couldn't stand working with. And let's just say, it's not who you'd expect. Let's start with the bombshell, Stanley Kubrick. To most, Kubrick is a filmmaking god. He's the mind behind 2001, A Space Odyssey, The Shining, A Clockwork Orange. His name gets thrown around with reverence. People worship the ground he walked on. But Duvall? He's not buying the hype. In his words, Stanley Kubrick was an actor's enemy. That's not a slip of the tongue. That's pure conviction. And he had the receipts to back it up. What Duvall took issue with was Kubrick's obsession with perfection. Kubrick was infamous for shooting a scene 50, 80, even 120 times until he got what he wanted. And while some actors like Jack Nicholson and Malcolm McDowell rolled with it or survived it, Duvall saw it differently. He called it out for what he believed it was: abuse disguised as genius. How can he even tell the difference between take 1 and take 94? Duvall asked. And that question hits deep. Because for actors, spontaneity matters. The emotion has to feel real. But if you've been screaming into the void for hours, what's left? According to Duvall, nothing. Just empty gestures. He believed Kubrick didn't guide his actors. He wore them down until there was nothing left but exhaustion and compliance. He pointed straight to two of Kubrick's most iconic films as examples of what he couldn't stand: The Shining and A Clockwork Orange. These films are often praised for their intense, even unhinged performances. But Duvall called them some of the worst acting he's ever seen. Yep, even Jack Nicholson's famous descent into madness didn't impress him. To most of us, Here's Johnny is unforgettable. But to Duvall, it was overcooked and hollow. What happens when you beat the life out of a performance instead of trusting your actor? And it's not just about technique. For Duvall, it all comes down to one thing: respect. He believed that the best directors work with actors, not on them. They collaborate. They trust. They inspire. Kubrick, in his view, did the opposite. He manipulated, controlled, overpowered. One story that backs this up comes from Shelley Duvall, no relation to Robert, who played Wendy in The Shining. She once said she had to do 127 takes of one scene. 127. That's not just demanding, it's punishing. And it left her emotionally wrecked. While she never fully condemned Kubrick, the pain in her interviews speaks volumes. Robert Duvall wasn't about to sugarcoat it. He called Kubrick's process unforgivable. Now, Kubrick might have been the most notorious name on Duvall's list, but he wasn't the only one. Flashback to 1969. Duvall was filming True Grit, a Western classic that earned John Wayne his first Oscar. You'd think it was a career highlight, right? Not even close. Duvall clashed hard with the director, Henry Hathaway, a grizzled veteran of old-school Hollywood. Hathaway ran his sets like a military operation. No time for actor input, no patience for emotional nuance. And that didn't fly with Duvall, who was deeply trained in the method, chasing authenticity above all else. He wanted to find the truth of his character. Hathaway just wanted him to hit his marks. It got so heated on set that John Wayne himself supposedly stepped in. According to Duvall, Wayne warned him, "If you don't stop arguing with Hathaway, I'm going to punch you out." Whether it was an empty threat or not, it showed just how disruptive things had gotten. Duvall was pushing back so hard on the director's authority that it was throwing the whole set off balance. Later in interviews, Duvall was tight-lipped about the experience. Whenever someone brought up Hathaway, he'd say, "We won't talk about him." That sentence says everything. It wasn't just a disagreement, it was a wound that never quite healed. And it underscored what Duvall values above all else: being treated as an artist, not a cog in a machine. And get this, even on a movie where everything looked like a dream come true, Duvall still ended up fighting for control. Let's talk about Tender Mercies, the film that earned him his one and only Academy Award for Best Actor. A quiet, emotional story about a washed-up country singer finding redemption in a dusty Texas town. Duvall played Max Sledge with a kind of raw vulnerability you almost never see in Hollywood. But behind that still haunting performance, a lot of creative tension. The director, Bruce Beresford, wasn't your typical tyrant. He was calm, thoughtful, the opposite of Hathaway or Kubrick. But even then, Duvall found himself battling over creative decisions. He wasn't just acting, he was defending the soul of the story. He fought for edits, staging, emotional beats. Some even said he was practically co-directing behind the scenes. At one point, Duvall reportedly stormed off set because he felt a decision compromised his character's truth. This wasn't about ego. It was about integrity. He believed in Max Sledge. And he wasn't going to let anyone mess with that. To Beresford's credit, he later admitted Duvall was tough to work with, but also acknowledged that the performance they got was worth it. And it was. It's a reminder that sometimes greatness doesn't come from smooth sailing. It comes from creative battles that shape something real. But the person who really got under Duvall's skin wasn't a director. It was a critic. That's right. One of Duvall's harshest takedowns was aimed at legendary film reviewer Pauline Kael. In an interview years after the fact, he didn't mince words. "She was a fraud," he said. "Why the venom?" It all goes back to Tender Mercies. While many hailed it as a masterpiece of restraint and emotional depth, Kael wasn't impressed. She thought it was slow, too quiet, too plain. And Duvall, who had poured his soul into that role, was livid. He didn't just see it as a bad review. He saw it as a failure to understand acting. He believed Kael and critics like her were dazzled by spectacle, like the stylish violence of Bonnie and Clyde, which she famously championed. Duvall saw that kind of praise as part of a deeper problem. Critics rewarding flash instead of depth, gimmicks over substance. To him, she didn't get actors. And that, he said, was unforgivable. Now, Duvall wasn't against criticism in general. But he believed it should come from a place of understanding. You don't have to love every performance. But you should at least try to grasp what the actor was going for. Otherwise, you're not critiquing, you're dismissing. And for someone like Duvall, who treats acting as a sacred craft, that kind of dismissal cuts deep. So what does all this tell us about Robert Duvall? He's not someone who plays by the rules. He doesn't care about industry politics or flattering powerful names. He cares about one thing: honesty. In the performance, in the process, in the people he works with. And if that puts him at odds with directors, co-stars, or critics, so be it. You may not agree with everything he says. You might think The Shining is a masterpiece or that Pauline Kael was brilliant. But Duvall's perspective reminds us that behind every iconic performance is a person fighting to tell the truth on screen, even when no one else sees it. So now we've got to ask, what do you think? Was Duvall right to call out Stanley Kubrick? Do you agree with him about actors needing more respect on set? Or do you think genius sometimes requires tough choices? Let us know in the comments. And hey, if you're into deep dives like this, make sure you like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories from the world of film. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you in the next one.